This case was actually a case being worked by another professional private investigator that I work with often. He was having a difficult time getting this guy served. I was hired to come in and assist as a second man on a difficult serve involving surveillance. Now, our subject lived in a secluded neighborhood with winding roadways out in the country. Most of the houses in the neighborhood were acreages with long driveways and large houses. The other PI had tried to serve the subject on numerous occasions at his residence, but was not successful. It was obvious that the subject was ducking service. In looking at the neighborhood, we identified a good choke point to catch the subject when he left. There was a stoplight on the main exit of the neighborhood that would come in very helpful for us. We set up in a manner where one of us would be over there by the stoplight and one of us would be over near the residence where we could watch the roadway when he came down. Now, since the other PI's vehicle had basically been compromised on previous attempts, I took up a position watching the road from his residence while the other PI sat by the stoplight. The plan was that I would radio the other PI when I see him leaving. The other PI was about a half a mile away, so we figured we had about a minute to get things in place. Once I radioed the other PI, he would keep an eye out, then pull in front of him from another driveway as he approached. Doing this, he could control the situation. When they got to the light, I would be coming up from the rear. One of us would jump out of the vehicle to serve him while the other videotaped the entire serve. Now, I know that this may seem aggressive, folks, but this is common in some of those really difficult situations where the subject is doing everything to avoid service. I have served many people at stop signs, stoplights, coffee shops, gas stations, you name it, wherever I followed them from their home, usually on their way to work in the morning. Now, you won't believe what the subject did when he left his house that morning. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Based on previous intel, we knew that he left around 7 or 8 every morning. This gave us a good window to work within to make sure that we got set up just perfectly. I found a little road where I could watch the road coming from his residence and would have ample warning. The setup was too perfect. This was going to be a breeze. Now, here he comes. He's coming down the road. He's driving normally. I radioed ahead and I let the other PI know that he's coming. As the subject approaches the stop sign, I see him stop and he just sits there. Now, I'm shooting video of all this too. And as I zoom in, I see that he is staring right in my direction. He just sat there at that stop sign for almost a full minute. Now, if you do a lot of surveillance, you know this is probably not a good thing. There was no other traffic, just him sitting there staring in my direction and me just sitting there waiting for him to do something. Eventually, he continues on down towards the main road, towards the stoplight, and towards the other PI. I was so relieved, but my relief was short-lived. As I then started to follow him, I see that he's driving pretty slow. I mean like 5 miles per hour slow. I'm like, uh-oh, he's suspicious. I just act like I'm driving to work, and I pull up behind him, and I drive slow along with him. Suddenly, he pulls into another driveway. I got a good look at him and I knew it was my subject. I pulled in right behind him and then he comes to a complete stop. I quickly radioed to the other PI and then I hop out of my car, papers and camera in hand, and I started walking towards the driver's side. As I approached the vehicle, he rolled his window down just a couple inches and I said, "Mr. So-and-so, I have some legal papers for you here." And then he starts yelling at me, "I'm not Mr. So-and-so, that's my brother. Now you move your car or I'm going to ram it." He then throws his car into reverse and I'm like, "Seriously, dude?" I just say as calmly as I can, "Mr. So-and-so, I'm working with the courts and I just have these papers to give you." He then looks me right in the eye and he rolls up his window and then he looks behind himself. And then he throws his vehicle into drive. He goes forward, then he turns sharply and he goes right through the ditch. He gets on the road and he heads right back towards his residence. Now my heart slows down a little bit, but I know I need to get him served. I know, folks, I know. I should have just tossed the papers on his hood and drove off and called it good, but I had a rookie moment there and I really thought that he would just accept the papers. I go back to my vehicle, I radio the other PI and I tell him he is heading back to his residence. Then I head towards the subject's residence. To make the problems even bigger, this is a very hilly area out in the country and radio signals are in and out at best. Phone service was practically non-existent. So at that time, I had no idea if the other PI ever got my messages. I get back on the road, head toward the subject residence, and I can see the subject pulling into the driveway. But wait, what's he doing? His driveway is about 1,000 foot long. I see him stop about 100 feet up the driveway, and then he gets out and he does something. But I can't tell what he's doing. Then he pulls up another 100 feet or so, and he does the same thing. What the heck is he doing? He does this several times before parking his vehicle and then entering his residence. Now, I was a little little nervous, to say the least, due to his actions, so I waited until the other PI got to where I was. I filled him in on the situation, and we decided to conduct what is called service by refusal. This is where the process server knows the subject is inside the residence, goes, knocks on the door. If he doesn't come out, the process server states in a loud voice something like this: Mr. So-and-so, I'm a legal process server. I have a summons for you to appear in court. I know you are inside, and I am conducting service by refusal. I am leaving the documents right here on the front porch. But wait, it's not over, not by a long shot. Now, as I approach the residence, I see objects laying in the driveway. I have no idea what these objects are, so I decided to just park on the street and walk up to the subject's house. As I'm walking along the driveway, I get a closer look at the first object. It was a 2x4. Yes, he laid out 2x4 boards along the driveway with nails sticking straight up out of them. Now I'm starting to understand. My subject may not be entirely stable. I walk up to the front door while the other PI is observing and capturing video of the entire process. I knock on the door and I ring the doorbell, and guess what? Guess what, folks? Yeah, I dare you. Guess. Yep, he never answered the door. Go figure. I go through the process by refusal. I place the papers on a little table next to the front door, and then I start heading back towards my car. I'm pretty happy with myself at that time. I got it done. Job well done, John. Then suddenly I hear somebody yelling behind me. I then turn around and I look, and I see the subject exiting the front door of the residence. He's walking towards me, yelling for me to get off of his property. As he's walking and yelling, I see his right hand on his right rear hip. I just keep walking backward. Now, as I'm walking, I'm saying things like, okay, Mr. So-and-so, I'm leaving now. Sorry to be a bother. And I just keep walking and walking and walking. Now, if you ever walked backwards for about 500 feet in fear for your life, it takes about 38.5 minutes, I think. At least that's what it felt like at the time. I get about halfway to my car, and he stops, and he stands there in the middle of his yard, hand on his hip, yelling at me. I get in my car, and I couldn't get out of there quick enough. Now, I doubt that he had a gun. As well, I know that the Make My Day law here in Colorado doesn't work for self-defense if somebody is just on your property. I had also identified myself to him numerous times, so he shouldn't have felt threatened by me. But nonetheless, if he has a weapon and decides to take action, none of that really matters. I'm just thankful that I was able to somewhat de-escalate the situation and get out of there without further incident. Remember why I was serving him? He went through all of this trouble, all of this drama, because he was being served a summons to appear in court to testify as to what he observed as a witness in a case. He wasn't a party to that case in any way. He wasn't being sued. He had nothing to do with it. He was just a witness.